Okay, so we're starting investment notes. So I want y'all to realize we're still doing application. Phones away. Phones away. This unit is not the easiest. So you definitely need to make sure you're paying attention. Okay, so investment notes. Investments, what are investments? Does anybody know? It's when you put your money into something. Okay, so you can put your money into the bank. Okay, some savings accounts have interest where you can gain interest leaving your money in the savings account if you have like over a certain amount. You can also invest in stock. Okay, but what about investments? Do you only gain money with investments? No, you can lose money too. Okay, so I want. Yeah, well, even if you invest in something good and then a pandemic happens, that could be it too. You see what I'm saying? Like, there's different reasons things fail, but you can invest in a lot of things. So this is figuring out investments. Okay, so P stands for principal. This is the amount of money put into your investments. Okay, T is time in years. Super important. So if I tell you 6 months, how would you write that for time? 1/2. Okay, because 6 months is half of a year. So you have to write it in years. Okay, annual percent as a decimal. How do you turn a percent into a decimal? So you move it to the left twice. So 30% would be 0.30. What about 6%? You move it to the left twice, and you fill any empties with a 0. So it'd be 0.06. So be careful with that. Okay, and then interest made is what is the money you made, okay? So knowing that, it says a teacher invests part of $12,000 at 6% annual interest and the rest at 9%. If the annual income from these investments was $945, how much did the teacher invest at each rate? Okay, so we're going to take this one piece at a time because just like linear application when we were doing before, it's a lot if you try to read it all at once. Okay, so I always remember this number because it's the last number we read. Okay, so it says income from these investments. Well, what represents the income? Yes, but which letter? P, R, T, or I? I. So we're going to put our 945 right there. Okay, so then we're going to take this one piece at a time and we're going to look at it because it talked about 2 different interest rates. Therefore, it had 2 different investments, correct? Correct. Okay, so it says part of $12,000 at 6% annual interest. Well, annual is yearly or for a year. Okay, and it says 6%. What's 6% as a decimal? 0.06. Okay, now it says part of $12,000. Do we know what part of $12,000? No, so what do we always use for our first unknown? X. So let's just put an X. Okay, now our second piece, it says the rest of the $12,000 at 9%. Okay, we're still talking annual, so time is still 1 for years. Okay, what's 9% as a decimal? So 0.09. Now, can we put X again? We can't use a different letter, actually. And I mean, I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to talk about that. We can't use a different letter because can you solve when you have 2 different variables? No, you can simplify, but you can't solve. And we're trying to solve to find exact. So we can't use a different letter. Okay, but I know that our total is 12,000. Okay? You're exactly right. 12,000 minus X. Wouldn't that give me what was left over after the first investment? Now, another way to check that is X plus 12,000 minus X. Well, X minus X, doesn't that cancel? These should always equal, when added together, your investment. Well, those X's cancel, and it equals 12,000, so that's a quick check to make sure your first boxes are correct. Okay? Now, if it doesn't tell you the total, you can't really use that trick. Like, there's one on the practice that says she did a certain amount, or she did X amount of money here, and then double that the second time. So you wouldn't be able to add them there because it didn't tell you the total. Does that make sense? So only when it tells you the total can you add them together. Okay, so I really think that's the hardest part of these. After that, it does get a little tricky solving, but it's not terrible. So X, you're going to multiply P times R times T plus the second P times R times T and set it equal to your income. So we're going to set that up outside of there. I just like to show it to you there. So it's going to be X times 0.06 times 1 plus 12,000 minus X times 0.09 times 1 equals 945. Now, do you see that I wrote everything exactly the way I had it in the table? Okay, I've had lots of mistakes today where people forget this minus X and then solve, and that makes it a huge difference. So you took away a whole part of this. Okay, so our first step is to simplify our two terms. Okay, so this first one, what's 1 times 0.06? Yeah, when you multiply by 1, I like when time is 1 because then it makes my life way easier, because really kind of can you ignore that 1? Okay, so 0.06 times X is just 0.06X plus, how am I going to simplify this one? What are we going to do? Distribute. Okay, so 0.09 times 12,000. Y'all, this is where your calculator becomes your best friend. Gives me 1,080. 0.09 times X is negative 0.09X, because the 1 we kind of get to ignore because 1 times any of that is just itself, equals 945. Any questions so far?
I don't get how you put stuff in the boxes.
So where we got these numbers?
Yes. Like how do you know when to go?
If you're still stuck on the next one, we'll talk about it. Okay? Okay, so let's solve this. Those are like terms, so we're going to combine them. So 0.09, they're on the same side of the equal sign, so we're going to keep the sign. So this is positive 0.06 minus 0.09, and that gives me negative 0.03. Bring down my 1080. Now what? Subtract 1080. Okay, so that gave me negative 135. And last step. Divide both sides by negative 0.03, because that gets my X all by itself. And what is that? 4,500. Should be positive. Did you say negative? So be careful, because that's negative, and then we divide by negative. Okay, so we know we're going to plug this back in, because that's what, aren't we looking for these first two boxes? Because it says how much did the teacher invest at each rate. So this first one was 6%, the second one was 9%, so X is at 6%. Well, X is 4,500. at 6%. Okay, how would we find out at 9%? Yeah, we're going to plug it in. What's 12,000 minus x? Well, x is 4,500. So 12,000 minus 4,500. So 7,500 at 9%. Can you check your work on these? Do you think you could? Could you plug in and just multiply? So 4,500, let me use parentheses, 4,500 times 0.06 times 1 plus, we're going to do parentheses again, 12,000 minus 4,500 times 0.09 times 1, and it should equal 945. Did it? Yeah, so you can definitely check your work. It's kind of annoying typing that much in your calculator, but it's totally possible. Okay? So those of you that were confused on where we got those numbers, I'm going to kind of recap on that, and then we're going to try the next one. And if you're still stuck after that, we'll keep talking about it. Okay, so it's talked about a teacher investing part of $12,000, but we didn't know what part. So remember, we always use x as our first unknown. Kind of like when we were doing the consecutive odd numbers and stuff like that. Like your x is always your first unknown. So we didn't know how much, but we knew it was at 6%, and r is our rate. It's our percent. Okay. Okay, and then we knew that it's talking annually, which is 1 year. Okay. We also knew that we made a total of $945, and that's where that came from. Okay, this is where the bottom came from. It says, invested the rest of the money, the rest of that $12,000. Whatever we didn't invest the first time, we invested the second time. At 9%, so 0.09, and again, it's talking if the annual income, so annual being 1. Okay, knowing this piece, we can't use a different letter because you can't solve when you have two different variables. So if we took the original amount of money and subtracted the first unknown, it gives you whatever was left. Okay? So let's look at number 2. Okay, so an artist has sold a painting for $410,000. He needs some of the money in 6 months and the rest in 1 year. He can get a treasury bond for 6 months at 4.65% and one for a year at 4.91%. His broker tells him the two investments will earn him a total of $14,961. How much should he invest in each rate? Okay, so we know the total right off the bat. That's the total amount he's going to get back after that 6 month and a year combined. Okay, now I want you to realize this first piece. It says he can get a treasury bond for 6 months. What does that look like in years? Half. So 0.0, or not 0.05, sorry, 0.5. 0.5. Now it's 4.65%. If I turn that into a decimal, it becomes 0.0465. And that is a big, ugly decimal, but we're not going to round, because do you want the bank rounding with your money? No, because they'll probably round down, and that's not, I mean, if they wanted to round up, I wouldn't complain, but they're not going to. Okay, so knowing that, it says, does it tell us anything about how much? What does it tell us about how much is invested? So it tells us the percent, yes, but doesn't it tell us the total amount? But does it tell us how much in each? No, so what do we use as our first unknown? Now we know the rest of that is going to go where? In the bottom piece, right? Because it's split between those two accounts. So how would I represent whatever's left over? So again, you take the original minus x. Okay, and this time it's for 1 year. Not always. But the other ones are more obvious in my opinion. Like it'll tell you added or this much more. Like it'll be you know what I mean? So if it's not obvious, this is probably what you're going to do. Okay, so 1 year at 4.91%. So when we move that over, we get 0.0491. Okay, so when we write that out, we get x. So remember, we multiply p times r times t plus p times r times t equals ri. So x times 0.0465 times 0.5 plus 410,000 minus x times 0.0491 times 1 equals 14,961. Okay. What do we do first? Not combining yet. We have to simplify each term first. Okay, so what is 0.0465 times 0.5? And don't forget your x because that's being multiplied as well. I'm telling y'all these are the biggest we're going to deal with, so don't worry. The ones on your practice are smaller, I believe. Okay, now this one gets really ugly because here 1 times 0.0491 is just 0.0491, right? So we can ignore this because if we multiply it, it stays the same. And we're going to distribute. So 0.0491 times 410,000 okay, and then 0.0491 times negative x. Now what do I do? Combine our like terms. So 0.02325 minus 0.0491 is negative 'Now what? Subtract. I get negative 0.02585x equals, that's like the worst decimal to write, I feel like. Negative 5,170. And then we divide. So negative 5,170 divided by this ugly decimal, and I get 200,000. Now am I done? What do I still need to figure out?
The words.
The words, you're exactly right. So we know that x is 200,000 and x is the 4.65%. Now, what is 410,000 minus 200,000? $210,000 at 4.91%. Y'all, I know these problems are a lot. I also know it's Friday, 7th period. Okay? I totally realize that. My brain is fried too. It's been a long week. But I want you to try at least 2 of the practice problems. Okay? If you fill out the table and you want me to check your table,